The rain was the first thing I noticed. It was not the soft drizzle of spring or the warm downpour of summer. It was the cold, biting rain of late autumn, the kind that seeped through cloth and bone and turned the earth to mud. I felt it on my face, on my hands, on the tattered rags that clung to my body. I smelled the rot of the ditch where I lay, the stench of dead leaves and waste. I heard the laughter of servants, distant and cruel. "Throw her out," my uncle's voice had boomed, fat and triumphant, just moments ago. "She is nothing but a beggar now. She has no proof, no claim, no family." I had died in that ditch. I had felt my heart slow, my breath fade, my eyes close to the gray sky. I had been 17, cold, alone, and utterly betrayed. I had given everything, my mother's dowry of 2,000 taels, her jade chest, her legacy, to rebuild his mansion, and he had denied it all. "What dowry?" he had sneered, his jowls shaking with wine. "You are a charity case we took in out of pity. Your mother left you nothing." And I had believed him. I had believed that I was worthless, that my memory was faulty, that I was simply a foolish girl who had dreamed of wealth. I had believed it until the very moment I died. But I was not dead. My eyes snapped open, and the ditch was gone. The mud was gone. I lay in my maiden bedchamber, the silk quilt rough against my skin, the familiar scent of sandalwood and mildew filling my nostrils. My hands were smooth and unblemished, untouched by years of servitude. My hair was long and dark, spread across the pillow, not gray with grief. I sat up so fast my head spun. The solar calendar on my dressing table caught my eye, the 15th day of the 6th month. 3 days before my wedding to Lin Wei. 3 days before my uncle would weep and wail and convince me to hand over my inheritance. I had been given a second chance. I had been reborn. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I swung my legs off the bed, my bare feet meeting the cold stone floor. I rushed to the mirror, my fingers trembling as I touched my own face, young, unlined, fierce. The eyes that stared back at me were not the eyes of the meek girl who had wept in the garden. They were the eyes of a woman who had already died and had nothing left to fear. I pulled open the small chest beside my bed, the one where I kept my mother's letters. The gold was not there. That was locked in the storage room, but the key was. I grabbed it, stuffing it into the folds of my robe. I had no time to waste. I knew exactly what was coming. A sharp knock rattled my door. "Alien, are you still Abed? Your uncle calls for you in the main hall." It was Aunt May, my uncle's young concubine, her voice honeyed and sharp as a blade. In my past life, she had been the one to unlock the dowry chest, to swap the real jade for painted stones while I stood by, weeping. She had been the one to whisper in my uncle's ear, to encourage him to sell the tea fields, to gamble away the rest. I had hated her, but I had also feared her. Not anymore. I yanked the door open so fast she stumbled back, her painted lips parting in surprise. Her hair was perfect, her robes pristine, but my eyes, I saw her flinch. They were not the eyes of the orphan she had tormented for years. "Tell my uncle," I said, my voice low and steady, "that I will be there shortly. But first, I must count my mother's dowry chest. I have heard whispers that the lock has been tampered with." Her face went pale. I did not wait for her response. I pushed past her and walked down the corridor, my bare feet slapping against the stone. Servants stared, their mouths open, but I did not care. I reached the storage room at the back of the women's quarters and pulled out the key. The chest was there, just as I remembered, its red lacquer faded, the gold lock gleaming in the dim light. I knelt, running my fingers over it. It was intact for now. But I knew that by tomorrow, my uncle would have a copy made. I pulled out the small dagger I had hidden beneath my pillow the night before, a gift from my father, the only thing he had ever given me. I pried the lock until it snapped. Inside, the gold ingots glowed like captured sunlight. The jade pendants lay nestled in velvet, their green depths cool and flawless. Not a single piece was missing. I took a deep breath, steadying my shaking hands. I wrapped 3 gold ingots and 2 of the smaller pendants in a silk cloth and tucked them into the deepest pocket of my robe. Then I closed the chest, rearranged the lock to look untouched, and stood. I would hide these in the hollow of the garden's old willow tree, the the same tree where I had wept as a child. This time, my tears would be saved for vengeance. I walked to the main hall, my footsteps echoing in the silence. I could hear voices inside, Uncle Zhao's booming laugh, Aunt May's simpering tones, and another voice I recognized with a jolt. Lin Wei's mother. Of course. They were here to discuss the wedding, to pressure me into handing over the dowry with false promises of love and family. I pushed open the heavy doors and stepped inside. The hall was bright with lantern light, the rosewood chairs arranged in a perfect circle. Uncle Zhao sat at the head, his beard freshly oiled, his fat fingers stroking the armrest. He looked up as I entered, his smile already forming. It died when he saw my face. "Alien," he said, his voice faltering. "You look unwell. Come, sit. We have guests." He gestured to Lin Wei's mother, who sat rigidly beside her son. Lin Wei himself was a thin, pale young man with a weak chin and shifty eyes. He avoided my gaze, just as he had in my past life. I remembered how he had stood by while my uncle robbed me, how he had divorced me later, calling me barren and cursed. I felt nothing for him now, but the cold weight of indifference. "I know what you're about to ask, Uncle," I said, not moving from the center of the hall. I clasped my hands before me, my voice carrying across the room. "You want my mother's dowry to rebuild the mansion." The room went silent. Lin Wei's cup stopped halfway to his lips. Uncle Zhao's smile faltered, replaced by something harder. "What nonsense is this? I have not even spoken. You do not need to speak. I know the roof has a leak. I know the east wall is crumbling. But I also know that you have already borrowed 300 taels from the moneylender in the market, and that the deed to the family's tea fields has been pawned. I know you have sold the East Wing's timber to cover your gambling debts." I took a step closer, watching his face drain of color. "You have no intention of rebuilding the mansion. You intend to pay your debts and flee to the southern provinces." Lin Wei's mother set her cup down with a loud clink. "What is the meaning of this, Zhaoda?" she said sharply. "I came here to discuss a marriage, not a scandal." "It is a lie," Uncle Zhao thundered, rising to his feet. His jowls quivered with rage. "The girl has gone mad from grief. She is delusional. I have never seen such ingratitude. I raised her, I gave her a roof. Did you?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the silk-wrapped bundle. I did not open it, I simply held it up. "If I am delusional, Uncle, then you will not mind if I take a small portion of my dowry to the magistrate to verify its authenticity. I have heard he is an honest man. Or perhaps I should take it to the prefect instead. I have heard he takes a keen interest in cases of family fraud." Uncle Zhao's face went from red to white. He lunged forward, his hand outstretched to grab the bundle, but Lin Wei's mother stood up abruptly, blocking his path. "You will not lay a hand on the girl in my presence," she said coldly. "If she is proof of her claims, we will hear her out." I could not help the small smile that tugged at my lips. I had not expected her to defend me in my past life. She had been the one to urge Lin Wei to abandon me. But the prospect of scandal and the loss of her son's reputation was enough to sway her. I turned back to my uncle, his face a mask of fury and fear. "I will make you a deal," I said softly, almost gently. "You will repay me every single coin of my mother's dowry, 2,000 taels of silver, and the full value of the jade chest, which I will have appraised by the imperial jeweler. You will do this within 1 month. If you do not, I will take the matter to the court. I have already written a letter to the prefect, outlining my claim. I have also made a copy of this letter, and I have given it to a servant who will deliver it if anything happens to me." It was a bluff. I had no servant, no letter. But I had learned in my past life that the most effective weapon was not the truth, it was the shadow of truth, the whisper of consequence. Uncle Zhao's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. He had none. Aunt May began to wail, clutching her sleeves, but he shoved her aside. "You ungrateful wretch," he hissed, stepping toward me. "You think you can threaten me in my own house? I will have you locked in the shrine. I will have you beaten." "I have already been beaten," I said, my voice ice. "I have already been thrown out, denied, and left to die in a ditch. And I have come back." I tilted my head, letting him see the full weight of my certainty. 1 month, Uncle. Or the prefect will hear of your gambling, your debts, and the young servant girl you sold to the pleasure house last year. I wonder if you will be as forgiving as I am. Lin Wei's mother grabbed her son by the arm and pulled him toward the door. We are leaving, she announced. This family is cursed. I will not have my son entangled in such filth. She shot me a look of pure venom, but I did not flinch. Lin Wei glanced back at me once, his mouth open, as if he wanted to say something. I did not meet his gaze. I had no use for him. My eyes were locked on Uncle Zhao, who had slumped into his chair, his face ashen and trembling. I had given him 1 month. But I knew him too well. He would not pay. He would scheme, he would plot, he would try to have me killed in my sleep. That evening, I walked to the old willow tree in the garden. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the wind carried the scent of rain. I knelt in the mud, my fingers digging into the hollow where I had hidden the gold and jade. My hands trembled, but not from cold. For the first time in 2 lives, I felt a fire burning in my chest, not the fire of rage, but the fire of purpose. I had escaped the first trap. But the real war had just begun. I stared at the coins glinting in my palm and whispered to the ghost of my mother, I will not fail again. The storm broke, and rain began to fall, cold and relentless. But I did not move. I had died in the rain once. This time, I would rise from it. I buried the bundle deeper, patted the earth flat, and stood. As I turned back toward the mansion, I noticed a figure standing at the garden gate, a tall, broad-shouldered man I did not recognize. His face was half-shrouded in shadow, but I could see the glint of metal at his belt. A sword. He did not move, did not speak. He simply watched me. I felt the hair rise on the back of my neck. Had my uncle hired an assassin already? Or was this something else, someone else? I held his gaze for a long moment, my heart pounding, then walked past him with my head held high. If he was a killer, he would have to try his luck. I was not the same girl who had died in that ditch. I was a girl who had already won the first battle. And I would win the last one too, even if I had to carve my victory from his bones. The stranger at the garden gate did not move. He stood like a stone sentinel, his face half hidden by the drooping branches of the willow, the rain plastering his dark hair to his forehead. I could see the outline of his sword belt, the hilt worn smooth from use. I had never seen him before, not in my past life, not in the years of servitude that followed my uncle's betrayal. He did not belong to the Zhao household. He did not belong to the village. And yet, he was here, watching me bury my gold. My first instinct was to run. My second was to grab the dagger hidden in my robe. I did neither. I had learned in the ditch that running only made the wolves chase harder. Instead, I squared my shoulders and walked toward him, my bare feet squelching in the mud. He did not flinch. He did not reach for his sword. He simply watched me approach, his eyes dark and unreadable. Who are you? I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. And what do you want? He was silent for a long moment. Then he stepped forward, into the faint lantern light that spilled from the mansion windows. He was younger than I had thought, perhaps 25, with sharp cheekbones and a scar that ran from his brow to his jaw. His clothes were travel-worn but clean, his boots caked with mud. He carried himself like a soldier, not a thief. I am Lu Feng, he said, his voice low and rough. I was hired by the magistrate's office to deliver a summons to your uncle. But I saw the way you walked out of the court today. I saw the way you faced him. He paused, his eyes flickering to the willow tree. And I saw you bury something just now. My blood ran cold. I had been so focused on my uncle, on Aunt May, on the contract I had yet to forge, that I had forgotten the most basic rule of survival: always watch your back. I had been careless. And now this man, this stranger, knew my secret. You saw nothing, I said, my hand moving to my dagger. And you will forget what you thought you saw. I have no intention of stealing from you, he said quickly, holding up his hands. I am not a thief. I am a disgraced soldier, dismissed from the northern garrison for striking a superior officer. I have been looking for work. And I have been watching your uncle for 3 days. I frowned. Watching my uncle, why? Lu Feng glanced toward the mansion, his jaw tightening. Because he owes money to my old commander. 500 taels. He borrowed it to cover his gambling debts, and he has not repaid a single coin. My commander sent me to collect, but I have seen enough to know that Zhao De is a man who will never pay unless forced. He will lie, cheat, and kill before he parts with a copper. His eyes met mine. I saw you confront him today. I saw the fear in his face. You have something he wants. And that makes you a target. I studied him, weighing his words. A disgraced soldier with a grudge against my uncle was not an ally I had expected, but he was not a threat either, not yet. If you are here to collect a debt, I said slowly, then we have a common enemy. But I do not trust easily. And I have been burned by men who promised to help me. Then do not trust me, Lu Feng said with a shrug. Trust the fact that I have no reason to betray you. Your uncle will never pay me what he owes. But if you are truly determined to make him pay, then we can help each other. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of parchment. I found this in his study tonight, while he was drunk and celebrating his victory over you. He thinks you are a foolish girl who will fold under pressure. He has already sent a message to a man named Blackboar, a bandit leader in the northern hills. He has offered Blackboar 300 taels to steal your dowry chest and kill you in the process. My stomach dropped. Blackboar. I had heard that name in my past life, a ruthless killer who preyed on merchants and travelers. My uncle had never hired him before, at least not in the timeline I remembered. But this was a new life, and I had already changed the course of events by confronting him publicly. He was desperate now. And desperate men did desperate things. When I asked, my voice barely a whisper. When is Blackboar coming? 3 days, Lu Feng said. He will arrive under the cover of the next storm. He will break into your chamber, take the chest, and slit your throat. Your uncle will claim you ran away with a lover. No one will question him. 3 days. I had 3 days to prepare, to outmaneuver a man who had already outmaneuvered me in my past life. But this time, I had a soldier at my side, a blade in my hand, and a fire in my heart that no bandit could extinguish. Then we have no time to waste, I said, turning toward the mansion. Come. I have a plan. Lu Feng followed me through the garden, his footsteps silent despite his size. I led him to the storage room where the dowry chest sat, its broken lock still dangling. He examined it with a practiced eye. This is the bait, he said, catching on immediately. You want Blackboar to find it? Exactly, I said. He will expect a locked chest with gold and jade. But if we replace the real treasures with painted stones and lead ingots, he will take the chest and ride off. By the time he discovers the trick, he will have already killed my uncle for lying to him. I paused, looking up at Lu Feng. But I need you to be here when Blackboar arrives. I need you to fight him. Lu Feng's scarred face split into a grim smile. I have fought worse men for less coin. But if I am to risk my life, I want payment. Not from your dowry, from your uncle's land. The tea fields. I heard you hold the deed now. I hesitated. The tea fields were my only source of future income, my only guarantee of independence. But what use was independence if I was dead? Fine, I said. If we survive this, I will give you a share of the harvest. But if I find out you are working for my uncle, I am not, he said, his voice cold. I have no love for men who steal from orphans. My mother was an orphan. My sister was an orphan. I have seen what men like your uncle do to women like you. He reached out and touched my shoulder, a brief, fleeting gesture. You are brave. But bravery alone will not keep you alive. You need to think like a killer. I nodded, swallowing my fear. He was right. I had been so focused on legal battles, on contracts and courtrooms, that I had forgotten the most basic truth of the world I lived in. The law was a paper tiger. The real power belonged to men with swords and no conscience. And if I wanted to survive, I had to become one of them. That night, I did not sleep. I worked with Lu Feng in the storage room, carrying the real gold and jade to the old willow tree in the dead of night. We buried it deeper this time, covering the spot with rocks and moss. Then we filled the chest with river stones wrapped in cloth, each one painted to look like a gold ingot. We replaced the jade pendants with painted pebbles. It was crude work, but in the dim lantern light, it would fool anyone who did not look too closely. When we were finished, I stood over the chest and smiled. It was a trap, and my uncle had walked right into it. The next morning, I went to the market. I knew my uncle would be watching, so I made a show of visiting the moneylender, of haggling over prices, of being a nervous, foolish girl. I even let a tear slip down my cheek when the merchant raised his prices. It was acting, all of it, but I knew my uncle had spies in every corner. By noon, he would hear that Alien was scared, that she was trying to sell her jewelry, that she was planning to flee. He would relax. He would think he had one dot, but I had not finished my preparations. I went to the blacksmith and ordered a short blade, small enough to hide in my sleeve. I went to the herbalist and bought a vial of sleeping powder, the kind that knocked a man out for hours. I went to the old widow who lived at the edge of the village and asked her to teach me how to tie a knot that would not slip. She looked at me with knowing eyes and did not ask questions. She had been cheated by her own husband once. She understood. On the third night, the sky darkened and the thunder rolled. I lay in my bed, fully dressed, the dagger in my hand, the sleeping powder tucked into my belt. Lu Feng was hidden in the garden, his sword unsheathed, his breath shallow. The storm arrived like a living beast, lashing the windows with rain, drowning the world in noise. And then I heard it, a low creak, a careful step, the whisper of leather and steel. Black Boar had come. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep, my heart slamming against my ribs. The door to my chamber swung open, slow and silent. I could smell him, sweat and old blood and the cheap wine of the northern hills. He moved toward the chest, his hand already reaching for the lock. He grunted when he lifted it, pleased by the weight. I heard him heft it onto his shoulder, heard his rough chuckle. He was about to leave when I spoke. Enjoy your treasure, Black Boar. I hope the painted stones are worth the journey. He froze. The chest clattered to the floor. He spun around, his hand going to his belt, but I was already moving. I threw the sleeping powder into his face, a cloud of white that filled his lungs and stung his eyes. He coughed, swore, lunged blindly for me. But Lu Feng was already there, his sword flashing in the lightning. The bandit went down with a wet gurgle, his body crashing against the floorboards. The storm raged on, oblivious to the blood seeping into the wood. I stood over the body, my hands shaking, my breath coming in gasps. Lu Feng knelt beside me, his sword dripping red. It is done, he said. He will not trouble you again. But I was not looking at the body. I was looking at the door, where my uncle stood, his face white as ash, his mouth open in a soundless scream. He had come to watch me die. Instead, he had watched his assassin fall. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw something I had never seen in my past life, pure, naked terror. I walked toward him, my bare feet leaving bloody prints on the floor. 1 month, uncle, I whispered. And now you know I mean it. He stumbled backward, his hands raised as if to ward off a ghost. But I was no ghost. I was flesh and blood, and I was coming for everything he had. The storm howled outside, and the lightning lit the room in stark white flashes. I smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman who had killed her first enemy and was already sharpening her knife for the next. My uncle ran. I had never seen him run before, not in all my years under his roof, not even when the moneylenders came knocking with their iron clubs. He was a man who always walked, always waddled, his fat belly leading the way like a drum. But that night, he fled down the corridor like a startled hare, his robes flying behind him, his slippers slapping against the wet stone. I did not chase him. I did not need to. He had seen Black Boar's body, seen the blood pooling on my chamber floor, seen the smile on my face as I stepped over the corpse. He knew now that I was not the same girl he had cheated. He knew I would not fold. Lu Feng knelt beside the body, his sword still drawn. He will go to the magistrate, he said quietly. He will claim you murdered this man in cold blood. He will twist the story to make you the villain. Let him, I said, turning away from the door. I have the contract. I have the confession. I have you as a witness. And I have the bandit's own belt. It has my uncle's seal on it, the one he uses to authorize payments. I found it when I searched Black Boar's pouch. I held up the small brass seal, its engraving clear even in the dim light. My uncle paid him. The magistrate will see that. Lu Feng's eyes widened. You searched him while I was fighting. You are either the bravest woman I have ever met, or the most foolish. Both, I said, and I meant it. I knelt beside the corpse and pulled the seal free, tucking it into my sleeve. Now help me move him. We cannot leave him here. The servants will talk, and talk spreads faster than fire. We dragged the body through the garden, the rain washing the blood from the stones. We did not bury him, that would take too long, and the ground was too hard. Instead, we carried him to the old well at the edge of the property, the one that had been dry for years. We dropped him in, and the sound of his impact echoed like a drum. I covered the well with a heavy stone, the same one I had used as a child to weigh down my kite. It fit perfectly. I stood there, breathing hard, my hands raw from the effort, and watched the rain fill the cracks around the stone. He would not be found. Not until the dry season, at least. By then, I would have won. The storm passed by dawn, leaving behind a world washed clean. I returned to my chamber and changed out of my blood-soaked robe. Lu Feng stood guard at the door, his face pale but steady. I had not expected him to stay. He had already done more than I had asked, already risked his life for a promise of tea fields and coin. But he did not leave. He watched the horizon, his hand on his sword, as if waiting for another attack. I need to go to the market, I said, pulling my hair into a simple bun. I need to spread a rumor. What rumor? That my uncle has gone mad. That he woke in the night, screaming about bandits and ghosts. That he fled to the temple to pray for forgiveness. I paused, meeting his eyes. If everyone believes he is unstable, then no one will believe his accusations against me. Lu Feng nodded slowly. And if he goes to the magistrate, then I will show the seal, the contract, and the confession. But I need to plant the seed of doubt first. I need the village to see me as the victim, not the aggressor. I went to the market that morning, my face painted with false worry, my eyes red from lack of sleep. I told the fishmonger that my uncle had had a terrible nightmare, that he had cried out about a man named Black Boar, that he had accused himself of terrible sins. I told the tea seller that Aunt May had fled to her mother's house in tears. I told the scribe that my uncle had locked himself in his study and refused to eat. By midday, the entire village was buzzing with the news. Zhao had lost his mind. It was the curse of his ancestors, they said. It was the guilt of his debts. No one mentioned me. No one mentioned the dowry. I was just the poor orphan, the innocent niece, the girl who had been so cruelly wronged. But I knew the truth. My uncle was not mad, not yet. He was terrified, and terror made men dangerous. I returned home to find Lu Feng waiting for me at the garden gate, his face grim. Your uncle has gone to the prefect, he said. He left an hour ago, with a bag of gold and a letter. He is accusing you of conspiracy with a bandit. He is saying you murdered Black Boar and stole his property. I felt my stomach drop. I had anticipated this, but I had not anticipated the speed. My uncle was not a man of action. He usually waited, plotted, schemed. But fear had lit a fire under him. Then I will go to the prefect too, I said. I will present my evidence. I will expose him. It is not that simple, Lu Feng said, grabbing my arm. The prefect is a friend of your uncle's. They gamble together. They drink together. He will not rule against Zhao unless the evidence is ironclad. I pulled my arm free. Then I will make it ironclad. I turned and walked to the mansion, my steps quick and determined. I went to my uncle's study, the same room where I had found his personal chop in my past life. It was empty. He had taken most of his valuables with him. But he had not taken everything. I searched through his drawers, his scrolls, his hidden compartments. And I found it, a ledger, bound in cracked leather, filled with his debts and payments. It listed every bribe, every gamble, every sale of my mother's inheritance. It was not signed, not sealed, but it was in his handwriting. It was proof. I took the ledger and went to the magistrate's office myself. I did not wait for the prefect. I went to the magistrate's assistant, a young man with shrewd eyes and a reputation for fairness. I placed the ledger on his desk, along with the contract, the confession, and the seal from Black Boar's belt. This is what my uncle owes me, I said. And this is proof that he hired a bandit to kill me. I want him arrested. The assistant studied the documents, his face unreadable. These are serious accusations, he said slowly. The prefect will need to see them. Then show him, I said. But show him the ledger first. Show him the names of the men he gambled with, the amounts he lost, the bribes he paid. Your prefect is in that ledger too. I saw his name 3 times for 3 loans my uncle made to him. The assistant's eyes widened. He did not know the prefect was in debt to my uncle. He did not know that the prefect's reputation was tied to my uncle's silence. I had not known it either until I had seen the ledger, but now I had leverage. And leverage was the only language men like the prefect understood. I will deliver this to him personally, the assistant said, his voice hushed. Wait here. I waited, my heart pounding. The minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. I paced the floor, my fingers twisting the fabric of my robe. Lu Feng stood by the door, his hand on his sword, his eyes scanning the street. I could feel the weight of the village watching, waiting, wondering if the orphan girl would finally fall. The assistant returned, his face pale. The prefect has reviewed your evidence, he said. He has ordered your uncle detained. But he will not issue a formal arrest, not yet. He wants a private audience. Tonight. At his estate. A private audience. It was a trap, I knew it. The prefect wanted to silence me, to bargain with me, to find a way to protect his own name. But I had no choice. I had to go. I will be there, I said. That evening, I dressed in my finest robes, the ones I had saved for my wedding. I pinned my hair with my mother's jade hairpin, the one I had hidden in the willow tree. I went to the prefect's estate with Lu Feng at my side, my heart a drum in my chest. The prefect greeted me in his private study, his face a mask of false warmth. Alien, he said, offering me tea. You have caused quite a stir. I have caused nothing, I said, declining the tea. My uncle caused this. I am simply defending what is mine. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. I have seen the ledger. I have seen the contract. I have seen the seal. But I have also seen your uncle's accusations. He says you killed a man. He says you are a danger to this village. I killed a man who was sent to kill me, I said coldly. I defended myself. And I have the proof that my uncle hired him. If you choose to ignore that proof, I will take it to the imperial court. I will tell them everything about the bribes, the debts, the gambling. I will tell them that the prefect of this county is a man who protects criminals. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. You are very bold for a girl with no family. I am bold because I have nothing left to lose, I said. I have already died once, prefect. I have already lost everything. I will not lose it again. I stood, my hands planted on his desk. You have a choice. You can arrest my uncle and let him face justice. Or you can protect him and face the consequences yourself. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I could see the calculations running through his mind, the risk, the reward, the price of silence. Finally, he nodded. The arrest will be made tomorrow, he said. Your uncle will be tried for fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. But you will not speak of the ledger. You will not speak of the loans. Do we have an understanding? I nodded, swallowing my disgust. We have an understanding. I walked out of the estate, my legs shaking, my breath shallow. Lu Feng caught my elbow, steadying me. You did it, he said, his voice filled with wonder. You actually did it. Not yet, I said, looking up at the stars. He is not done yet. He will try to escape. He will try to bribe his way out. I need to make sure that does not happen. I reached into my sleeve and pulled out the small vial of sleeping powder I had not used on Black Boar. I need you to go to the jail tonight. I need you to put this in his food. I need him to sleep through his trial. Too drowsy to speak, too groggy to defend himself. Lu Feng stared at the vial, then at me. You are ruthless. I am a survivor, I said. And tomorrow, I will watch my uncle break. He took the vial and disappeared into the night. I stood alone in the courtyard, the cold wind cutting through my robes. I had won the second battle. But the war was not over. My uncle would be tried, but he would not be executed. The prefect would not allow it. He would be exiled or imprisoned or banished to a temple. And he would spend the rest of his days plotting revenge. I had to make sure that revenge never came. I had to make sure he was too broken to fight back. I thought of my mother's jade, buried in the willow. I thought of the tea fields waiting to bloom. I thought of the life I had lost and the life I was building. And I smiled. Tomorrow, Zhao De would fall. And I would be the one to push him. The trial was held in the main courtyard of the magistrate's office, a open space ringed by stone pillars and crowded with onlookers. I arrived early, before the sun had fully risen, dressed in a simple gray robe that made me look smaller than I was. I wanted to seem weak. I wanted the crowd to pity me. I had learned that pity was a weapon sharper than any sword, and I intended to wield it with precision. Lu Feng stood behind me, his hand resting on his sword hilt, his scarred face unreadable. He had done as I asked. The sleeping powder was in my uncle's morning porridge, administered by a bribed jailer. He would be drowsy, slow, unable to form coherent arguments. He would look guilty even if he tried to defend himself. The crowd murmured as my uncle was led into the courtyard, his wrists bound with rope, his robe stained and rumpled. He looked terrible. His eyes were glassy, his mouth slack, his steps unsteady. He blinked at the sunlight like a mole emerging from the earth. The prefect sat on a raised platform, his face a careful mask of neutrality. I knew he was not neutral. I had seen his name in the ledger, had seen the amounts he had borrowed from my uncle. But he was also a coward, and cowards preferred survival over loyalty. He had already decided to let Zhao fall. He just needed the crowd to believe it was justice. The charges were read aloud by the scribe: fraud, theft of inheritance, conspiracy to commit murder. The crowd gasped at the last one. I heard a woman whisper, "The orphan girl, he tried to have her killed." I kept my face still, my hands clasped in front of me. I looked like a porcelain doll, fragile and breakable. It was a lie, but it was a useful lie. My uncle tried to speak. He opened his mouth, his eyes darting around the courtyard, but only a slurred mumble came out. The prefect frowned. The accused appears to be unwell. Does he have a statement to make? My uncle shook his head, his face reddening with frustration. He tried again, louder this time, but the words came out garbled, nonsensical. Some of the onlookers laughed. Others shook their heads in disgust. The prefect called for the witnesses. The moneylender came forward, his ledger in hand, confirming the debts. The stable boy testified about the night my father died, the night my uncle had been screaming in the yard about silver. The market scribe produced the contract, signed and sealed. And then it was my turn. I stepped forward, my voice trembling on purpose. I told them how my uncle had wept and wailed, how he had begged me to save the family name. I told them how I had handed over my mother's dowry, my only inheritance, my only hope for the future. I told them how he had denied it all, how he had thrown me out, how he had left me to die in a ditch. I did not mention my death. I did not mention the rebirth. I simply told the truth as it had happened in my past life, and the tears that fell down my cheeks were real. They were not tears of sorrow, they were tears of fury, finally released. The prefect called for the final piece of evidence, the seal from Blackboar's belt. I produced it, holding it up for all to see. This was found on the body of the bandit who attacked my chamber, I said. It bears my uncle's personal mark. He paid Blackboar 300 taels to kill me. The crowd erupted into shouts. I heard someone curse my uncle's name. I heard a woman sob. My uncle tried to rise from his knees, but the guards pushed him back down. He was crying now, whether from the drug or from fear, I could not tell. I did not care. The prefect rose to his feet, his voice booming across the courtyard. Zhao, you have been found guilty of all charges. You are hereby stripped of your title, your property, and your standing. Your lands and holdings will be seized and redistributed to the rightful heir, your niece, Alien. You will be sentenced to exile for the remainder of your days. He paused, his eyes flickering to me for just a moment. You will be taken to the northern border at dawn. You will never return. My uncle collapsed, his body crumpling to the ground. The guards dragged him away, his moans fading into the distance. The crowd cheered, not for the prefect, not for the magistrate, but for me. I was the orphan who had won. I was the girl who had faced down a monster and survived. I stood in the center of the courtyard, my face wet with tears, and I let them clap. I let them praise me. I had earned it. But I did not celebrate. I went home to the mansion, now mine by law, and I walked through its empty corridors. The servants had fled, afraid of scandal. The rooms were silent, the furniture covered in dust sheets. I went in my uncle's study and sat in his chair, the same chair where he had planned my death. I looked at the ledger on the desk, the contract, the confession. I had done it. I had won. And yet, I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No joy. Just a hollow emptiness that stretched from my chest to my fingertips. I had fought so hard to survive that I had forgotten what it felt like to live. Lu Feng found me there, hours later, as the sun set and the room grew dark. He did not speak. He simply stood in the doorway, watching me. "You look like a woman who has conquered a kingdom," he said quietly, and found it empty. I looked up at him, my eyes red. "I have everything I wanted," I said. "The mansion, the land, the money. And I still feel like I am drowning." He walked closer, his boots silent on the wooden floor. "Because you have not let yourself feel it yet," he said. "You have been fighting for so long that you do not know how to stop." I shook my head. I cannot stop. My uncle is exiled, but his allies are still out there. The prefect is still in power. There are men who will want revenge, men who lost money because of me, men who were friends with my uncle. I am not safe. I will never be safe. "Then do not stop fighting," Lu Feng said. "But stop fighting alone." He knelt beside my chair, his scarred face level with mine. "You have a fortune now. You have land. You have a name. Use them. Build something that cannot be taken from you. Build a wall so high that no enemy can climb it." I stared at him, his words sinking into my bones. He was right. I had been so focused on tearing down my uncle that I had not thought about what came next. The tea fields were mine. The mansion was mine. But they were just things, cold, lifeless things. They would not protect me. They would not give me purpose. I needed something more. I needed a legacy. The next morning, I woke before dawn and walked to the tea fields. The women I had hired, the outcasts, the widows, the desperate, were already there, their hands stained green from the leaves. They looked up as I approached, their faces wary. They had heard the gossip. They knew I had won. But they did not know if I would be like my uncle, hoarding my wealth and turning a blind eye to their suffering. I knelt beside them in the mud, and I began to pick leaves with my own hands. "I am not your mistress," I said. "I am your partner. This land is as much yours as it is mine. We will grow together. We will share the harvest. And we will build a village where no one is ever thrown out for being poor or desperate." They stared at me, their eyes wide. Then, one by one, they nodded. The eldest woman, a gray-haired widow named Granny Lu, reached out and touched my hand. "You have a good heart," she said. "Your mother would be proud." I felt a lump form in my throat. No one had said that to me since my mother died. I had been so consumed by revenge that I had forgotten the woman I used to be, the girl who dreamed of helping others, of healing wounds, of building a world where no one had to beg. I had found my purpose again. And it was not revenge. It was redemption. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and growth. The tea fields flourished under our care, the leaves turning a deep, vibrant green. I sold our first batch to a merchant from the capital at 3 times the market price. I used the money to buy tools, seeds, and blankets for my workers. I opened a small store in the village, selling our tea under the name Phoenix Blossom, a name chosen by Granny Lu, who said I had risen from the ashes of my old life. The village began to change. The women who had once shunned me now came to my door, asking for work, asking for advice. The men who had once whispered about witches now bowed their heads when I passed. I was no longer a victim. I was a leader. But peace, I learned, was a fragile thing. One evening, as I was closing the store, a rider came galloping into the village, his horse covered in sweat. He was a messenger from the prefect's office, his face pale and urgent. "Alien," he said, dismounting, "you must come at once. Your uncle has escaped." My blood turned to ice. "Escaped? How? The guards were bribed," the messenger said. "He fled during a storm, 3 nights ago. He is heading north toward the border. But he has sworn to return. He has sworn to kill you." I felt the world tilt beneath me. My uncle was gone, but he was not defeated. He was still out there, nursing his hatred, planning his revenge. And he knew where I lived. He knew my routines. He knew my weaknesses. I had taken everything from him, and he would stop at nothing to take it back. I thanked the messenger and sent him on his way, but my hands were shaking. I walked back to the mansion in a daze, my mind racing. I had been so focused on rebuilding my life that I had forgotten the most basic rule of survival. Enemies do not disappear. They wait. Lu Feng was waiting for me in the garden, his face drawn. I heard, he said. The entire village is talking about it. He will come for you. You know that? I nodded, my throat tight. I know. I have been so careful, so calculated, and I still miss this. I should have made sure he was watched. I should have demanded he be executed, not exiled. You cannot blame yourself, Lu Feng said, stepping closer. You are not a general. You are not a jailer. You are a woman who fought to survive and won. But now you must survive again. And this time, you will not do it alone. I looked up at him, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that I had not noticed before, something soft, something warm. He had been my ally, my bodyguard, my partner in crime. But he had also been something more. He had been the one who stayed when everyone else left. He had been the one who knelt beside me in the dark and told me to build something that could not be torn down. I reached out and took his hand. I do not want to fight alone anymore, I said. I want you to stay. Not as a soldier. As something else. He squeezed my fingers, his scarred face breaking into a smile. I have been waiting for you to say that, he said. I have been waiting since the night you buried your gold in the rain. I have seen you fight, bleed, and rise. I have never met a woman like you. I do not want to leave. That night, we made plans. I would reinforce the mansion, build a wall, hire a guard. I would also send word to the northern temples, the ones where exiled criminals often sought refuge. I would offer a reward for my uncle's capture, dead or alive. It was a cold decision, but I had no room for mercy. He had tried to kill me twice. He would not get a third chance. I wrote the letters myself, my hand steady, my resolve hard as iron. But even as I sealed the envelopes, I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. My uncle was cunning. He was patient. He had waited years to steal my dowry, and he would wait years to kill me if he had to. I could not spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. I had to go after him. I had to finish this, once and for all. The next morning, I gathered my workers and told them I was going north. I would find my uncle. I would drag him back to face justice, real justice, not the prefect's half-hearted exile. Granny Lu begged me not to go. You have a good life here, she said. Do not throw it away for revenge. It is not revenge, I said. It is peace. I cannot build a future while he is still out there, waiting to destroy it. I have to end this. Lu Feng was the only one who did not try to stop me. He simply packed his bags, sharpened his sword, and stood at the gate. I am coming with you, he said. You are not going alone. I did not argue. I had learned that some things were worth fighting for, and some people were worth keeping close. We left that afternoon, riding north into the unknown. The road was rough, the weather cold, but I did not waver. I had survived death once. I could survive it again. I had faced my uncle in the courtroom, in the village, in the shadows of my own home. Now I would face him on his own ground. I would look him in the eye and I would make him pay for every tear I had shed, every night I had spent crying in the dark, every moment of fear that had haunted my dreams. I would make him pay for the life I had lost, and the life I had fought so hard to reclaim. And when it was over, I would return home. I would tend my tea fields. I would build my village. I would become the woman my mother had always believed I could be. But first, I had to find him. I had to end him. I had to survive. I had no other choice. It was not revenge that drove me forward. It was the knowledge that I had finally found something worth protecting, not just the land, not just the mansion, but the women who depended on me, the future I had built with my own hands. I would not let my uncle take that away. Not again. Not ever. I spurred my horse forward, the wind whipping my hair, the sun rising at my back. The hunt had begun. And this time, I was the hunter. The northern road was a ribbon of mud and stone, winding through forests that grew denser and darker with each passing mile. I had never traveled this far from home. In my past life, I had never left the village at all. I had died in a ditch, forgotten and alone. Now I rode a borrowed horse, a sword at my hip, a soldier at my side, and a fire in my chest that no winter wind could extinguish. Lufome kept pace beside me, his eyes scanning the tree-line, his hand never far from his blade. He had not asked me again if I was sure. He had simply followed, as if he had always known he would end up here, riding north to hunt a ghost. We stopped at a small inn on the third night, the only shelter for miles. The innkeeper was a thin woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She looked at my robes, my horse, my companion, and raised an eyebrow. "You are not merchants," she said, her voice flat. "Merchants do not ride with swords. And they do not look like they are hunting something." I did not lie. I had learned that lies were easy to see through, and the truth was often more useful. "I am looking for my uncle," I said. "Jauda. He is a fugitive from the southern counties. He would have passed through here within the last week." The innkeeper's face flickered with recognition. She did not speak for a long moment, her eyes narrowing. Then she pointed to a corner of the common room, where a group of rough-looking men sat drinking. "He was here," she said quietly. 3 days ago. He was traveling with a man named Dogface Lee, a hired killer. They were talking about a woman who had stolen their fortune. They said they would find her and make her pay." My stomach clenched. Dogface Lee was a name I had heard in whispers, a man who killed for silver and smiled while he did it. My uncle had not just escaped, he had armed himself. He was coming for me with a blade, not just words. "Did they say where they were going?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "The border," the innkeeper said. "They said they had a contact there, a smuggler who would take them across into the northern territories. Once they crossed, they would be beyond the reach of the law. But they also said they would return after they had settled their scores." She looked at me with something like pity. "You are the woman, are you not the one who stole the fortune?" "I did not steal it," I said, my voice cold. "I reclaimed it. He stole it from me first." The innkeeper shrugged. "It does not matter to me. But it matters to him. He is obsessed, girl. He talks about you in his sleep. He wakes up screaming your name." She paused, her eyes flickering to Lufome. "If I were you, I would turn around. Go south. Disappear. He will not stop until you are dead." I shook my head. "Neither will I." We slept in the stable that night, our horses between us and the cold. Lufome did not speak until the fire had died to embers. "We are getting closer," he said. "But so is he. He is not running anymore. He is hunting. And he has a killer at his side." "I know," I said. "That is why I have you." He looked at me, his face half hidden in the shadows. "I will not let him hurt you. You know that." "I know," I said. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. Not safety. I had learned that safety was an illusion. But peace. The peace of knowing that I was not alone. We rode out at dawn, following the innkeeper's directions. The road grew rougher, the forest thicker. By midday, we reached a narrow pass, flanked by cliffs on both sides. It was a perfect place for an ambush. I slowed my horse, my hand moving to my sword. Lufome did the same, his eyes scanning the rocks above us. "They are here," he said quietly. "I can smell them." Before I could respond, the air filled with the whistle of arrows. I threw myself from my saddle, hitting the ground hard as a shaft thudded into the tree where I had been. Lufome was already moving, his sword out, his body between me and the attackers. I drew my own blade, a short, practical weapon I had bought from the blacksmith, and scrambled behind a boulder. The arrows stopped. Then I heard a voice I knew, a voice that had haunted my nightmares for years. "Alien," my uncle called, his voice echoing off the cliffs. "I knew you would come. You could never resist a chance to gloat. But I have a surprise for you. I am not the same man you defeated in that courtroom. I have nothing left to lose." I peered around the boulder. My uncle stood on a ledge above us, his robes tattered, his face gaunt with hunger and hatred. Beside him was a man I did not recognize, thin, scarred, with yellow teeth and eyes like a snake. Dogface Lee. He was holding a crossbow aimed directly at me. "I have an offer for you," my uncle continued. "Give me back the deed to the tea fields. Give me back the mansion. And I will let you walk away. I will even let you keep your life." "You have nothing to bargain with," I called back. "You are a fugitive. I am the one with the law on my side." The law, my uncle laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. The law is a joke. The prefect took my gold and let me escape. He is just as corrupt as I am. You think you have won, but you have only traded one master for another. He gestured to Dogface Lee. I have 3 arrows left, and all of them have your name on them. Make your choice. I looked at Lufome. He was crouched behind a rock, his face set in grim concentration. He met my eyes and nodded. He had a plan. I just had to keep my uncle talking. Why did you do it? I called out, my voice ringing across the pass. Why did you steal my dowry? Why did you try to kill me? I was your niece. I was your family. My uncle's face twisted with rage. Family, you were a burden. Your father was a gambler and a drunk. He owed me money before he died, and I had to take what was owed. Your dowry was never yours, it was my repayment. I was entitled to it. He spat into the dirt. But you, little mouse, had to ruin everything. You had to fight back. You had to make me look like a fool. And now I am in exile, thanks to you. Because you deserve it, I said, my voice cold. You are a thief. A liar. A killer. And you will pay for what you did. He screamed then, a wordless scream of pure fury. He grabbed the crossbow from Dogface Lee and aimed it at me. I saw the bolt fly, saw it spiral toward my chest. And then Lufone was there, his body a shield, his sword flashing. He knocked the bolt aside with a clang of metal, and the next moment he was running toward the cliff, his boots finding footholds where there were none. Dogface Lee fired his own weapon, but Lufone dodged, rolling and coming up with his blade in hand. The fight was fast and brutal, a clatter of steel, a spray of blood, a single cry of pain. Dogface Lee fell, his body tumbling down the rocks. My uncle stood alone, his crossbow empty, his face white with terror. I climbed up the cliff, my hands bleeding on the sharp stones. When I reached the ledge, I saw Lufone standing over my uncle, his sword at his throat. My uncle was on his knees, his hands raised, his voice a trembling whisper. Please, he said, looking at me. Please, Alien. I am your uncle. I am the only family you have left. I looked at him, this man who had stolen my youth, my fortune, my life. He was broken now, gaunt, desperate, pathetic. I could kill him. I could drive my sword through his heart and end this nightmare forever. But as I stood there, looking at his terrified face, I realized I did not want to. Killing him would not bring back my mother. It would not heal my wounds. It would only make me as cold and cruel as he was. I am not going to kill you, I said. You are not worth the blood on my hands. His face flickered with relief, and then with something else, something darker. He lunged, a hidden dagger flashing from his sleeve. But Lufone was faster. His sword swept down, not killing, but cutting deep into my uncle's wrist. The dagger clattered to the ground. My uncle screamed, cradling his hand. You will pay for this, he hissed. You will both pay. No, I said, stepping closer. You will pay. You will face the prefect's justice. But first, you will return with me to the village. You will stand before the people you wronged. And you will confess. Every crime. Every lie. Every stolen coin. I knelt beside him, my face inches from his. Or I will take you to the border myself and leave you there, wounded and alone, to see what kind of mercy the world has for men like you. He did not speak. He just stared at me, his eyes burning with hatred. But I saw something else, fear. He was afraid of me. He was afraid of what I had become. And that was enough. I turned to Lufome. Bind his hands. We are taking him home. The journey back was slower, burdened by my uncle's injuries and his constant attempts to escape. But we reached the village within a week, and the people greeted us with a mixture of shock and awe. They had heard about the hunt. They had assumed I would fail. But I had not. I had captured my uncle and brought him back to face the justice he had escaped. I had become more than a victim. I had become a legend. The prefect, hearing of my return, tried to avoid the trial. He sent word that he was too ill to preside. But I had anticipated this. I had already sent a letter to the imperial court, detailing every bribe and corruption I had discovered. The court sent a special investigator, a stern-faced woman named Magistrate Chin, who had no patience for cowardly prefects. She arrived with a retinue of clerks and guards, and she took over the case within hours. My uncle was tried again, this time in front of the entire village. There was no sleeping powder, no bribery, no escape. He stood in the center of the courtyard, his wrist bandaged, his face ashen, and he confessed. Every crime, every lie, every stolen coin. Magistrate Chen sentenced him to life imprisonment in a labor camp in the south, where he would work the fields until he died. It was not the death penalty, but it was worse, a slow, grinding punishment that would strip away every shred of his remaining dignity. I watched him being led away, his eyes hollow, his spirit broken. I felt no joy. I felt only a quiet satisfaction, the satisfaction of a job finally finished. That evening, I walked to the old willow tree and stood in its shadow. The moon was full, the same moon I had seen on the night I buried my gold. I knelt in the grass and dug up the bundle I had hidden so long ago. The gold was still there. The jade was still there. But I no longer needed it. I no longer wanted it. I had built something more valuable, a community, a purpose, a future. I placed the jade pendants back in the chest and left them there. They were my mother's legacy. They were also my past. I was ready to let go. Lu Feng found me there, as he always seemed to. You look like a woman who has found peace, he said. I think I have, I said, smiling. For the first time in 2 lives, I think I have. He knelt beside me, his hand reaching for mine. And what happens now? What happens to the girl who fought so hard to survive? She becomes the woman she was always meant to be, I said. She builds her tea fields. She raises her village. She lives. He did not say anything. He simply pressed his hand to my cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear I had not realized I was shedding. And in that moment, I knew that my second life was not about revenge. It was about redemption. It was about learning to live again, to love again, to trust again. I had been given a second chance, and I had not wasted it. I had turned my sorrow into strength, my pain into purpose. I had survived. And now, for the first time, I was ready to truly live. The morning after my uncle was led away to the labor camps, I woke to the sound of birdsong and the warm light of the sun streaming through my window. For the first time in months, I did not wake with a knot of fear in my stomach. I did not reach for the dagger under my pillow. I simply lay there, breathing, feeling the weight of the world lift from my shoulders. It was over. The battle was won. But as I dressed and walked through the corridors of the mansion, I realized that I had no idea what came next. I had spent so long fighting that I had forgotten how to live. Lu Feng was already in the garden, practicing his sword forms in the morning mist. He moved with a grace that belied his size, his blade cutting through the air like a silver ribbon. I watched him for a moment, my heart swelling with an emotion I had not allowed myself to feel. Gratitude, yes. But also something else, something warmer, deeper. He had been my rock, my shield, my partner in every battle. And now that the battles were over, I did not know how to be with him in peace. He saw me and lowered his sword, a smile spreading across his scarred face. "You're up early," he said. "I thought you would sleep for a week." "I could not," I said, walking toward him. I kept thinking about the village, the tea fields, the women. "There is so much to do." "Always," he said, sheathing his sword. "But you do not have to do it all at once. You have time now. You have the rest of your life." I nodded, but his words unsettled me. The rest of my life. It was such a vast, open expanse that I did not know how to fill it. I had been defined by my revenge for so long that I had forgotten who I was without it. I walked to the tea fields that morning, my feet carrying me on autopilot. The women were already there, their hands moving in the familiar rhythm of harvesting. Granny Lu looked up as I approached and smiled, a gap-toothed grin that warmed my heart. "Look at you," she said, gesturing to the fields. "You have done what no one thought possible. You have taken a wasteland and turned it into gold. And you have given us a home." She reached out and grasped my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Do not forget that, girl. You are not just the orphan who survived. You are the woman who built something new." I spent the morning working alongside them, my hands stained green, my back aching. It was simple, honest labor, and it grounded me in a way that no courtroom or contract ever could. By midday, I was exhausted but content. I walked back to the mansion with a lightness in my step that I had not felt in years. But when I reached the gate, I saw a familiar horse tied to the post, a sleek, black stallion I had seen before. It belonged to Magistrate Chen. I found her in the main hall, sipping tea and examining my uncle's old scrolls. She looked up as I entered, her sharp eyes appraising me. "Alien," she said, rising to her feet. "I have come to deliver a message from the imperial court. And to offer you something." My heart quickened. What kind of message? She reached into her sleeve and pulled out a scroll, its seal unbroken. "The court has reviewed the case. They're impressed by your tenacity, your intelligence, and your courage. They have made a decision about the tea fields." She paused, her gaze searching mine. "The court would like to appoint you as a provisional administrator of the northern agricultural districts. You would oversee the cultivation of tea and other crops, implement reforms, and report directly to the imperial treasury. It is a position of power and prestige, one that has never before been offered to a woman." I stared at her, my mind reeling. An administrator. A woman in charge of a district. It was unheard of. It was impossible. And yet, here was Magistrate Chen, offering it to me on a silver platter. "Why me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Why would they choose a woman for such a role? Because you have proven yourself," Magistrate Chen said simply. "You have outwitted a corrupt uncle, outmaneuvered a corrupt prefect, and built a thriving enterprise from nothing. The court needs people like you, people who are not afraid to break the rules in the pursuit of justice. And the court is not blind to the fact that you are a woman. In fact, they see it as an advantage. You understand the struggles of the people. You have lived them." I felt the weight of her words settle over me. A position of power. A chance to make a real difference. It was everything I had ever dreamed of and more. But it also meant leaving the village, leaving the tea fields, leaving the women I had come to love. "I need time to think," I said. "This is not a decision I can make lightly." "Of course," Magistrate Chen said. "Take all the time you need. But the court expects an answer within the month." She left me with the scroll and rode away, her horse disappearing over the hill. I stood in the hall, the scroll clutched in my hands, my mind spinning. Lu Feng found me there, his face etched with concern. "What happened?" he asked. "You look like you have seen a ghost." I handed him the scroll. He read it, his brow furrowing. "This is incredible," he said. "You could be the most powerful woman in the province." "I could be," I said slowly. "But I would have to leave everything behind. The village. The women. You." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "Is that what you want?" "To leave?" I shook my head, tears pricking at my eyes. "No, I do not want to leave. But I also do not want to be the woman who runs away from a challenge. I have fought too hard to be afraid of power." He stepped closer, his hands cupping my face. "You are not afraid of power, Alien. You are afraid of losing yourself. But you will not. You are stronger than any title or position. You are the woman who survived death and came back fighting. You can do anything you set your mind to." I leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his warmth. "What would you do?" I asked. "If you were in my place," he smiled, a soft, sad smile. "I would take the position. Not for the power, but for the chance to help more people. You have already changed this village. Imagine what you could do for the entire district. Imagine the women you could lift, the families you could save. That is what you were born for, Alien. Not revenge. Redemption." His words settled over me like a balm, soothing the fear in my heart. He was right. I had been given a second chance, and I could not waste it on fear. I could not stay in this village forever, hiding from the world. I had to go out and change it. I had to become the woman my mother always believed I could be. I made my decision that night. I would take the position. I would become the administrator. But I would not go alone. I would take the women from the tea fields, the ones who had taught me how to fight, how to work, how to survive. We would build a network of tea farms across the district, training women in the trade, giving them a future. We would create a community that could not be torn down. And I would bring Lu Feng with me, not as a soldier, but as a partner, a confidant, a friend. I had spent my first life alone, and I would not spend my second that way. The next morning, I gathered the women in the courtyard. I told them about the offer from the court. I told them about my decision to accept. And I asked them to come with me. I cannot do this alone, I said, my voice trembling. I need you. I need your strength, your wisdom, your courage. Will you join me? They looked at each other, their faces a mix of shock and hope. Then Granny Lou stepped forward, her back straight, her eyes blazing. We will follow you to the ends of the earth, she said. You gave us a home when we had nothing. We will give you our hands and our hearts. I felt a sob rise in my throat. I had been so afraid of losing myself that I had forgotten the most important truth. I was not alone. I had never been alone. The women, the village, Lufeng, they were my family now. They were my future. We spent the next month preparing for the move. I sold the mansion, not to a merchant or a noble, but to the village itself, to be used as a school for girls. I distributed the gold from the dowry among the women, giving each of them a share of the wealth I had reclaimed. I left the jade chest in the school, a symbol of my mother's legacy, a reminder that a woman's worth could not be measured in coins. On the day of our departure, the entire village turned out to see us off. I stood at the gate, my horse beside me, my heart full to bursting. Lufeng was at my side, his hand resting on my shoulder. The women were lined up behind us, their faces alight with hope. I looked back at the village, at the school, at the willow tree that had witnessed my rebirth. I had come here as a broken, frightened girl. I was leaving as a woman of power, purpose, and peace. The road ahead was uncertain. I knew there would be challenges, enemies, setbacks. I knew I would face prejudice and doubt, simply because I was a woman. But I was not afraid. I had faced death and won. I had faced betrayal and triumphed. I had faced my own fear and conquered it. There was nothing in this world that could break me now. We rode north, toward the capital, toward our new lives. The sun was warm on my face and the wind carried the scent of wildflowers. Lufeng rode beside me, his gaze steady and sure. I reached out and took his hand, and he squeezed it gently. We did not speak. We did not need to. We had already said everything that mattered. As we crested the hill, I looked back one last time at the village below. The school was already bustling with activity, the children laughing and playing in the courtyard. The tea fields were green and vibrant, a testament to the women who had worked them. The willow tree stood tall and proud, its branches swaying in the breeze. I smiled, a smile that reached my eyes and warmed my heart. I had not just survived my second life. I had thrived. I had become the woman I was always meant to be, the woman who did not wait for the world to change, but changed it herself. I turned forward, toward the horizon, and I rode into my future. It was bright and open and full of possibility. It was mine, all mine. And I was finally, truly ready to live.